Hello and welcome back to the another episode of Daily News Quiz Analysis for IAS Prelims 2025. It is 19th April today, and in this video we are going to solve some important questions which could be very much relevant for your preparation. But before we will start our discussion, I would like to give you the brief introduction about this initiative so that if you are new to our channel you will get more connected with us. I will be very much brief in it. In this video, we are going to discuss three types of questions, and these questions would be taken from three different sources. So depending on it, the first set of questions which we are going to discuss here would be taken from the current affairs of today's. What we are going to do, we will take up the most important articles from the newspapers. We are going to break them down into the simplest language possible, and we are going to discuss them. And finally, we would have derived this question here, and we will discuss this question, and it will give you the idea that which part of the newspaper is important for you, what should be your approach when you are reading these news articles, and how you can expect a possible prelims question from those particular topics. This is what we are going to do in the first phase of our discussion, and most of the questions which we are going to discuss here would be from this phase only. After we will solve questions from the current affairs, we will shift our approach to the second part. Here we will discuss questions from the static portion. As you know, currently we are discussing Indian polity, and in Indian polity we are discussing the procedure in the parliament, and in the procedure in the parliament we are discussing various types of motions. So today we are going to discuss substitute motion. We'll discuss what is that, and we'll try to derive a possible prelims question from that particular topic, so that it will give you the exact idea how a question regarding that topic can be asked in the exam, and it will prepare you well before the exams are there. After we will solve questions from the current affairs and the static part, we will shift our approach to the last part of our discussion, where we will discuss questions from the previous year question book. To me, this is the most important part, because in here we will learn what is the vocabulary used by UPSC examiners for framing your papers. We will try to learn what are the different trends they try to follow for framing your questions, and at the same time we will try to learn what are the different types of questions which you can still solve if you don't have the proper knowledge, what are the different techniques you can implement in the exam. I'm talking about the elimination methods, and at the same time we will try to understand how we can implement this information which we will get in this video in the upcoming exam. So this is in a nutshell what we are going to do in this video. Now, before we will start our discussion, I would like to request you guys, please do subscribe the channel, do share it with your friends so that they may also get benefited from this initiative, and please do write in the comments what else should we bring for you guys. Now, without any delay, let's have a look at the first question which we had brought here. As you can see here on the screen, the question is basically talking about the carbon emissions, reducing carbon emissions, or we can say the question is talking about the carbon emissions regarding the logistics sector. So why we brought this question here? What was the reason for that? The answer to this is in today's newspaper. The article named as Steering the Decarbonization of India Logistics Sector, how we can reduce carbon emissions from the logistics sector. So for that, before we will jump to that discussion, first we will try to understand the question here. We will solve the question, then we will jump to that discussion and get important points which can be much relevant for your mains exam as well as for your interview. So let's try to solve the question first. Here the question says, which of the following statements regarding carbon emissions from the logistics sector in India are correct? First statement: road transportation accounts for the largest share of carbon emissions within the sector. This is 100% correct. There is nothing wrong with this statement, because in the article itself it talked about various ways the logistics sector contributes to the carbon emissions, and in it was very much clearly mentioned, and it's very much clearly understood that the road, if we will see the total emissions by the logistics sector, it would come around 13.5% of the total emissions what we emit. 13.5% of this 13.5%, if we will break it down further, it will look like this. Approximately it is around 88% 88% of this emission. 88% of this emission from the road sector comes from what? It comes from the roads. road transportation. 88% of the emissions from the logistics sector comes from the road transportation. Rest comes from the airways or waterways or the railways. It is the rest which contributes to this emission. But the majority of the emission comes from the road sector, which is 88%. And of this 88% which is coming from the road sector, 38% is from the trucks only. So this was the data given in the article. So please do remember this data. It can be very much relevant when you are writing the mains exam question, maybe if any asked about this topic, as well as it can be very much important for your introduction part. Maybe there you may be asked a tricky question, why we should shift our transportation regarding the logistics sector, regarding the freight transportation, why there is need for the shifting it. So you need to give this data there. It can be very much relevant for you, and it will be very much impressive from your side if you can answer it in this way. So with this question regarding the first statement, the first statement is correct, because while solving the first statement, we gave the context of the news article, what was basically in the newspaper. So first statement is correct. Second statement, it says the Indian government has set a target to reduce carbon emissions intensity of its economy by 45% by 2030, which directly addresses the logistics sector. Even though the Indian our governments it has set the target of reducing carbon emission intensity by 45% by 2030, but it is not directly addressing the logistics sector. It is addressing overall sectors which contribute to the emission. So this statement particular to logistics sector becomes incorrect. So second statement is incorrect here. Now coming to the third statement, here we can see it says increased adoption of electric vehicles in last mile delivery is a significant measure by being undertaken to mitigate emissions. 100% correct. It is a significant measure, and in this article itself there were way forward given. What can be the way forward, how we can reduce this emission, and in those way forwards there were we should shift to the railways, we should focus much on the waterways, and also we should focus on electric vehicles. These were few way forwards given in this article itself. So third statement becomes correct, 100% correct. Now the fourth statement, it says the development of multimodal logistics parks is aimed at reducing carbon footprints by promoting a shift towards more energy efficient modes of transport. Nothing wrong with the statement, so it is also correct. So with respect to this question, the correct statements are statement 1, statement 3 and statement 4, and from the code given below, the correct code would be option C. So with this, I hope you had understood the question here. What was the question? How logistics sector contributes to the carbon emissions, and what government is planning with respect to that in reducing that, and also the article highlighted various sources how this emission is contributed through the logistics sector. What is the major source? It is the road transportation, and in road transportation, what is the major source? It is the trucks which contribute majorly to this sector. And what were the way forwards given? That we should shift more on the railways, we should shift more on the waterways, we should improve our transportation here, and also we should shift to the alternate fuels and also to the electric vehicles. One more thing which is out, which was not in the article, I would like to mention that there are two ways in which we can modify our vehicles. We can reduce the emissions by modifying the vehicles. First, if we have to go for the alternate fuels like biofuel, we can do the further research with respect to ethanol. We can bring in ethanol, or we can go for various other naturally occurring oils. We can biofuels, we can go for them and do little bit research over them, and we can we can go for these alternate fuels. And the second way at the same time is we can go for the composite materials when we are when we are designing our vehicles. The weight of the vehicle is also one of the major contributing factor to the efficiency of the vehicle. How much a vehicle will consume, how much fuel it will consume, it is also dependent upon the weight of the vehicle. So what we can do here, we can use composite materials instead of the conventional iron and steel, so that we can reduce the weight of the vehicle. It will increase the efficiency of the vehicle, and at the same time it will reduce the emissions in this way. So this is out of the context. It was not in the newspaper, it was not in the article written there, but this can be the way forward, and you can write this point in your answer writing also. So with this, I hope you had understood the question here as well as the context of the question. Now let's move to the another slide and see what question we had brought there. Here, let's see what does the question say. The question is about which of the following scenarios is least likely. So please do read the question carefully. It is very important for you if you want to crack your prelims exam. One thing you should be very much habitual of, that is reading the question very carefully. So read the question here. It says, which are the following scenarios is the least likely to be considered defamation under Indian law? So here are few scenarios given. Here we have to look at these scenarios and we have to give our logical answer, what we had understood from the defamation, and which of these scenarios is least likely to be considered as defamation. And if you will ask me, sir, what is the level of this question? Should we make, is it very easy? Is it easy? Is it moderate? Or is it very hard? You know, for few students, for majority of the students, it would be very hard question because it is very tricky. You know, even though it seems very logical, it seems very what you had understood, but at the same time it is very hard to answer such questions because everything in here you will find it defamatory. So that's why I say please read the question carefully, and you know, if you don't have the choice here, go for the least thing. You know, you have to look at your personal experience, you have to what you are seeing in the media, you have to look at these things. This understanding, your personal observation can be very much important in solving such questions. So let's solve the question here. Now let's have a look at the question and solve it. Why now before we solve, I will give you a little context to this question. Why we are solving this question? Because there is a conflict between ANI versus Wikipedia, where ANI went to the High Court, and High Court claimed that Wikipedia should remove few pages regarding the ANI which were very much defamatory in a nature. And we know about Wikipedia, it is not something it generates the source on its own, but it is, you know, it aggregates the information. It is an intermediary. So these are the people who are using it. So in this regard, when the High Court said that they should remove the pages, the Supreme Court came in and it said that it is very much least expected from the High Court to give such decision. And you know, the reasons which were highlighted by the High Court, according to the Supreme Court, these are way out of the practical business of the Wikipedia. Those things cannot be achieved. If High Court had a problem, it should have given only to those citations which were defamatory in nature. Those citations should have been only removed, not the whole pages. So that is the discussion. That's why we need to understand, we need to have this proper understanding what contributes to the defamation. So through this question we will get this idea, I hope. Now let's solve the question. Question says, which of the following scenarios is least likely to be considered defamation under Indian law, keeping in mind the fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression? Fundamental right of, we have to, you know, there is a beautiful balance given in Article 19 between the fundamental freedom of right to freedom of speech and expression, and the restriction to it is defamation. One of the restriction to it is defamation. So let's try to understand the question. Here the first statement says, a news channel broadcasts a report, first scenario, without verifying facts, alleging a prominent businessman is involved in illegal activities leading to a significant drop in his company's stocks value. This is 100% a case of a defamation, so this can't be the answer because it is saying, the question is saying which is least likely to be considered defamation. So that's why I said, you know, you have to read the questions carefully. You know, if any news, you know, for example, if there is any social media, they are not checking the facts and they are intentionally or unintentionally harming any business person, giving false information about him, and you know, because of that information his stocks goes, his company's stocks value goes down, and it is clearly a case of a defamation. Second statement, it says, an individual posts on a social media platform that a specific restaurant serves unhygienic food based on a single personal experience which they genuinely believe to be true. You know, even though it seems very much, it can not be the reason for the defamation, but let's keep this statement here. You know, there is little discussion over it. Let's move to the third statement. Let's see what does it say. It says, during a heated debate on television, a political opponent calls a former minister corrupt without providing any factual basis. That is also this is definitely the case of a defamation. It can be the case of the defamation. So third statement is also incorrect. Now the fourth statement, it says, A film critic publishes a review stating that an actor's performance in a recent movie was terrible and lacked any depth. Even though the actor and director believe the review is unfair, this cannot be the case of the defamation. It is the personal choice. Even in the second statement, it is also the personal choice, but making it unhealthy, you can say it is not that much tasty. That is something different. But giving this unhygienic food, it makes it for the defamatory. So you have to look at these words also, this unhygienic food. If you will say that any restaurant is providing the unhygienic food, that means that it is about the reputation of the restaurant. It can, it can genuinely, defame the, it can genuinely harm the reputation of the restaurant. And also it is your personal belief, not that you have any proofs regarding that. So that second statement becomes the case of the defamation. So it is also incorrect. Now with respect to this question, which is least to become the case of the defamation, it is the film critics statement. This is least to become the case of the defamation, because it is our view how we watch the movies. For example, if there is any actor, we believe that he is not performing well, whatever he believes, whatever the director believes, it is for the market. He gets paid for our views only, and that is something different. That it is not going to harm the people who are consuming it. It is not, and it has very wide. It will not have that impact on that person as compared to the unhygienic food comment will have the impact on that restaurant. So with respect to this question, I hope you had understood it. With respect to these statements, this statement is least to become the case of the defamation. So with this question, I hope you had got this basic understanding here. The reason for this question is to have you to make you understand the basic understanding. What can be the this minute line which divides the freedom of speech and expression and the defamation. What is this minute line? I hope I was able to deliver here, and I hope you had understood the question. Now with this, let's move to the another slide and see what question we had brought there. Well, here the question is basically about the Indian pharmaceutical exports. Why we are discussing this question? Because in the financial year 2025, our pharmaceutical exports have hit 30 billion. Our pharmaceutical exports hit 30 billion. So with respect to this, a question about it can be asked: what are the destinations for the pharmaceutical exports from India in the fiscal year 2024-25? A question about it can be asked. So let's have this basic understanding about it. The question says here, based on the trends in the recent years, which of the following represents the likely top 4 destinations for pharmaceutical exports from India in the fiscal year 2024-25? 100% there is USA, 100% there is UK, 100% there is Brazil, and there is South Africa and France. These are the top 5 destinations for the Indian pharmaceuticals. So with respect to this question, the correct answer would be option C. With this, I hope you had understood the question as well as the context why we discussed it, because we hit 30 billion this year. So with this, there were few more articles in the newspaper. There was a discussion about Holocaust, how it should be viewed differently. But I did not feel that is important for your prelims exam. Neither I felt that is that much important for your mains also. If there was something extraordinary written there, then it was, or any information that could have impacted your preparation, I would have definitely brought that article here. But there was not that was not much important for you. But for the historical perspective, what is Holocaust? That I believe you should know that the anti-Semitic, the anti-Semitic idea, how it rose, the fight between the Christianity and Judaism, how the Christians believe that Jesus Christ was crucified by the Jews, and all this, how it led to the Hitler's that his agenda was the Aryan race, the race he believed in, that his race agenda, and how he believed that the Jews they are harm to the society, they are very much anti-nationals, and how this led to the Holocaust. And usually in the museums this Holocaust is shown to gain the sympathy, how what was done to the people there. And now the museums are rethinking that, the historians are rethinking that this, how this Holocaust should be presented to the people, how it should be presented to the people, that it should, at the same time as it is showing that what were the cruelties faced by the Jews, and at the same time it should showcase the resistance which was given by the Jews against the Nazi forces. This also should be shown in these museum arts which usually highlight this Holocaust. That was the whole some discussion in the article, and I hope that is, even though this is not that much important for you, but for your sake, for the information's sake, I discussed a little bit about that. So with this, let's move to the another slide and see what question we had brought from the static portion. Well, here the question is basically about the substitute motion. So let's see what this substitute motion is. Question says, regarding parliamentary procedure in India, a substitute motion is best described as, first, a motion moved to amend the original motion by adding or deleting certain words or phrases. No, it is not for the amendment, it is for the substitution. You are going to substitute the initial motion, which was the original motion, by the another motion. So the first statement is incorrect. Now let's move to this third statement. It says a motion moved to postpone the discussion on the original motion to a later date. This is also incorrect. Fourth statement, a motion used to express a lack of confidence in the government on a specific policy matter. This is also incorrect. So the correct answer would be option B, that is a motion that proposes an alternative proposition to the original motion, and if adopted supersedes it 100%. Correct. So with respect to the substitute motion, the correct answer is option B here. With this, let's move to the last part of our discussion, where we will solve some previous year questions. Here the first question, this question was asked in the year 1997. Let's see what was the question. Question says, which of the following rivers thrice forks into two streams and reunites a few miles further, on thus forming the islands of Srirangapatnam, Sivasamudram and Srirangam. So these islands are formed, they thrice fork into two streams and reunite. Which is the river here we are discussing? It is the Kaveri river. So please do know that. About geography, I always say that there is nothing much which has improved since years. So there are high chances that questions can get repeated. So please do know that. Now with this, let's move to the last question which we had brought here. Here the question says, consider the following rivers. First, Kishan Ganga, Karnataka and Pain Ganga. The correct sequence of these rivers when arranged in the north-south, it is first Kishan Ganga, also called the Neelam river in Jammu. Second, it would be Ganga from the Ganga Brahmaputra basin. Then third, it is not Karnataka, sorry, I had this should have not been the option here. It should have been, wait, why Ganga? It is not Karnataka, sorry, it should have been Vain Ganga. Vain Ganga. It is Madhya Pradesh, MP, and after that it is third, and then the fourth would be Pain Ganga, it would be Maharashtra. So the correct sequence for this is 1, 2, 3 and 4. It is the correct sequence for this question. So with this, I hope you had understood the question. Now with this, I would like to say thank you to you guys for staying with me. Thank you very much and have a nice day.